So the purpose of this video is to show how to replace an existing PLC. In this case, it's a Soul Machine Schneider Electric PLC. It's an M221 series, as is shown here. And we'll be replacing this with the M241 PLC. So this is the M241 PLC. As you can see, it'll have M241 PLC there. So we'll be replacing this here shortly. The first thing I want to do is identify the components that are shown here. First, we have the PLC block itself, and attached to it here is an analog expansion card. This may not necessarily be the same color as the existing analog or other cards that you may have attached to your PLC. Usually it matches if it's the same series, but in this case, for the purpose of showing this, I've just used whatever I have available. But usually it has the same dark gray color as the PLC box itself. The other thing I want to identify here is a serial line cable, which is in this case is an Ethernet or RJ45 type connection. And here's an Ethernet connection, and it's also an RJ45. Please note the Ethernet connection has a green, and as you can see, has a label showing Ethernet or stating Ethernet. The other thing I want to identify here, which is also very important, is your 24 volt DC power coming in. In this case, the ones that I have here are both 24 volts DC, which should match, and that's very important because if you have an AC and you power it to a DC, you'll have issues and you'll potentially damage the PLC hardware. And the same applies if it's the other way around. If you power up a PLC that requires AC and you provide it DC power. So the first step that we want to do is we want to power off the electrical panel that's supplying power to this PLC and also potentially the analog card. Here I don't have anything wired, just for the purpose of showing this illustration, but if you do have any wiring, do not remove the wiring. We want to first power off the PLC by identifying the appropriate fuse in the electrical panel or breaker to basically not have power to this PLC before we start. So once you've confirmed that there is no power to the PLC, the next thing we want to do is we want to disconnect the power that's being wired to this PLC. And the way you want to do that here is you just want to push up on this. If you want, you can use two hands to push up. I'll show you that again. You could, as you can see, you'll just have to push up, or sorry, pull up. And as you can see now, this is loose. So you'll leave this here, just leave it in the panel. And the next step you want to do is remove the analog card. I apologize. The next step we want to do is remove this from the rail that's usually in the back of the PLC. And how you would want to do that is using a flathead screwdriver. So what you'll do is you'll just hold on to the PLC firmly and just fit in this right over here. I'll zoom in for you so you can see. Just fit it in, and you can hear that click. That means it's disengaged from the DIN rail. And the next thing you want to do is also do the same for the main PLC block. And you hear a click. Once you hear that, that means you can easily just lift up like this and take off the PLC from the DIN rail. So I'll assume right now it's off the DIN rail. The next step is to remove the analog card, and the way you want to do that is, I'll just zoom out here briefly, is you'll see that you got this tab here. You'll just want to push up on it, and it should come out on the other side, as you can see here. And what you want to do is just kind of swiggle it out. You'll have it disconnected, as you can see here. Alright, the next thing we want to do is we want to disconnect the serial line connection. In this case it's a yellow cable. It may not necessarily be the case in your electrical panel. They could be both gray. Just make sure you know which one's your serial line and which one's your Ethernet line. So this, in this case, is a serial line that we want to disconnect, the Modbus serial line. And the next step is to remove the Ethernet connection. And this is how you do that. Alright, so now you can see here we have nothing connected now to this PLC. So we'll just put this aside. Please note, this is the M221 series PLC by Schneider Electric. And the next thing we want to do is we want to bring in the replacement PLC. So the first thing we want to do is, before we connect things up again, we want to make sure first that here, as you can see, this part where the analog card plugs in is covered. If it is covered, what you want to do is just try to get either your nail in there, or you can get a Phillips and remove that, or flathead and remove that from the side. So yeah, what you want to do is just get this here. It kind of just peels off like that. I normally like to just leave this here on the side. So if it hasn't already been removed, just make sure to remove it. And then what you want to do is just reconnect this to that. So what you'll have to do is line it up. Okay. Don't apply too much force. If things are not fitting, just make sure things are lined up properly. Once things are lined up properly, as you can see here, it's flush against the back. What you want to do is secure it by pushing in on this tab here. You hear a click. Yeah. So now it is secure. Just make sure it is secure. Try to just pull lightly on it. Once that's done, what you want to do is connect up the power. Okay. And what you want to do is just push it in as far as you can. Once you push it in as far as you can, you want to push down on that plastic clear tab, and you'll hear a click. Alright? Then after that, what we'll do is we will connect this up onto the DIN rail. Once again, just make sure that here this side is all down before you do this part. So what we'll do is you'll just go like this on the DIN rail, make sure the top tabs are in, and then once you push down firmly against the rail and make sure it's flush on these sides here, you'll want to just push out these little tabs on the actual PLC just to make sure it's secured to the rail in the electrical panel. Okay, now that it's secure, what we'll want to do is reconnect our communication lines again. So our communication lines are this one being our Ethernet. It's here. And the next thing is our serial line. As you can see, our serial line is not at the front of the PLC. It's actually on the top of the PLC. So I'll show you that briefly here. So, top of the PLC, which is right over here. So you want to make sure to connect that up as well the right way. So you'll connect that up. Just slides in. And yeah, so this is pretty much it. This is how it all comes together. So that is a brief presentation on how to replace your M221 PLC with an M241 PLC. And once you reconnect you supply power back to the panel, you should be able to see that the lights are on, and yeah, everything should be running. Just to also include here, I want to let you know that this slot here is your SD card little slot, and here is your USB port, which is further in, but you can see that. Alright, thank you very much. Hopefully this was informational video for you. Thank you and have a nice day. Goodbye.